Hello and welcome to Jon and Louise on Life.
And this week, with violent protests in the news, should we have the right to protest?
We have a really good interview with Sir Ghillean Prance, who is a prominent British botanist and ecologist and former director of Kew Gardens.
And also, we'll be twinning our bins.
So we'll see you in a minute.
Well, first up today is the question, should we have the right to protest? And we've seen in this past week a few incidents where the police have been involved with protesters. They broke up a vigil for Sarah Everard, and they didn't look very good in that. And then there was a riot in Bristol, and the police were set upon, the police station was set upon, police vans were burnt, and policemen were injured. So we're looking, should we have the right to protest, especially with COVID at the moment?
Well, I think it's an incredibly difficult subject because people's feelings, especially about the Sarah Everard situation, were really running very high. And it's made it even worse through COVID restrictions because we're all trying to follow them because we all want to get out the other end of this. We've got this magical date of the 21st of June where our whole lives are supposed to return back to normal in some shape or form. But there is a growing dissatisfaction and people are feeling very unsettled at the moment about how we can still exercise our rights and stand up for what we believe in and still keep everyone safe and not put people at risk by getting together in great big crowds because we can't do that.
Yeah. It's actually from Monday the 29th of March, that we can actually legally protest again. So any vigils, any protests at the moment are technically illegal. Do you remember we went to London last year with Jessie and there was the Black Lives Matter march?
Yes.
I think that one was...
That was during COVID, but it wasn't when we were fully locked down.
Yeah, but
we had a freedom of movement then, didn't we?
The funniest thing about that was a bloke walked his dog, and his dog had this stick that must have been a couple of metres wide, and the dog just went right through the middle of the protest, and people...
With a stick like this, and
in
he
his
just
mouth.
made a great big furrow.
And separated the crowds. It was brilliant.
I mean, nobody minded about that particular protest because we weren't fully in lockdown then. We had freedom of movement anyway, but it held up everything, and none of the buses could get through, and it was an irritation for people travelling.
We had to catch the tube because our bus didn't turn up.
Oh, I hate the tube. It absolutely freaks me out. So we were doing everything we could to not be on the tube. But I think that from this Monday, if people can protest anyway, then that's going to ease the situation. But what are people going to be protesting about in the next few weeks? Because we've got Boris Johnson telling us that we might have to have a passport to go to the pub, which for me, I know there's going to be several of my friends who have serious medical conditions and cannot have this vaccine. They're not going to be able to come out and be part of us. So they're going to have like an exemption passport for those that genuinely can't have that. I think people are going to be protesting more and more and more. This is not something that's going away.
Yeah. And the protest that was in Bristol last weekend, one of the names for it was Kill the Bill. And they didn't actually mean kill the police, but to kill the bill that's going through Parliament at the moment, which is the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill, which is looking to restrict protest. And I better read this so I get this right. What they're looking to do is that they are looking for greater police powers to stop peaceful protest if it is too noisy or a nuisance.
Oh, for goodness sake. So what does that mean then?
Well, anything that is deemed to upset somebody else can now be stopped.
You just need Mr. Grumpy, who lives down the street and doesn't want any protests going past his front door, to put in a formal complaint, and the police can step in, and that is when violence happens and people get injured and people get hurt. Yeah. And that's a police state.
I mean, technically they've done it already in some areas. Christians were protesting outside an abortion clinic. And the abortion clinic complained, and they were told their protest was illegal, and they were made to go down the road a few hundred meters or something like that and away, so where they would not be seen or heard or anything. So is that right?
So they could still protest, but they couldn't do it outside the clinic.
But they can't do it outside the clinic. Also, there's another question. Is it right for Christians to protest anyway?
Yes. Yes, I'm up for protesting when I need to. I don't care, and I'm up for being arrested as well.
Well, I was going to say, the next question, is it right for Christians to be involved in violent protest?
No. No, I don't. I don't think that taking a baton to someone and beating them up in the name of Jesus is right in any way, shape or form.
All right. But Jesus made a whip and drove out people from the temple.
But did he hit anybody with it? Did he just turn the tables over and bellow and give them a bit of a shot across the bow and chase them out? Did he actually wallop anybody with it?
I don't recall that he did. No.
Thus saith the Lord, he didn't wallop anybody with it. I wouldn't make a whip, because I think you're asking for big trouble then. And if you've got any weapon in your hand, then you are a target for the police. They can take you down with a stun gun, pepper spray, water cannons. You can tell I'm into this kind of stuff. But anyway, they can. If you're weaponized, they have rights to take the weapon off of you in any way they feel they need to. So no, but Jesus is God. He wants to make a whip. He can do whatever he likes.
You heard it here first.
Yes, from the very gentle,
and also you heard it here,
calm and passive pastor's wife.
Jesus didn't hit anybody as well.
No, he didn't. It doesn't say in the Bible he hit anyone. He made the whip. If he'd have walloped somebody, I think it would be in there, but he didn't. Anyway, we better bring that one to a close.
Yep, before this protest.
And before
Remember,
I get really
if you
controversial.
do want to protest, you can from Monday.
Yes. Okay, moving on now to our brilliant interview with Sir Ghillean Prance. We're calling him Sir Ian because I think Ghillean is it Irish?
Gaelic
or
for,
something? Yeah,
yes.
It's Gaelic for Ian. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy this as much as we did.
Well, today we are very blessed to be joined by Sir Ghillean Prance, who has an incredible story to tell, an incredible background, and been involved in so many things. Ghillean is Gaelic for Ian, so we're going to call you're going to call him Sir Ian.
We are.
And try and remember to get that right. But anyway, Sir Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. And let me just give a bit of your background. Sir Ian was raised, I think, on the Isle of Skye, or spent a lot of time there, educated at Oxford University, then went to spend some time in the States with the New York Botanical Gardens, and spent a lot of time out in the Amazon.
Okay.
Before coming back to this country in 1988 and to be director of Kew Gardens, or the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. And that was just after this big storm, wasn't it, of 87. So that must have been a very interesting time to take over at Kew Gardens.
It was. I wondered if there was going to be a garden to take over when I read about the storms, but it was a challenge. It added to the challenge of a very interesting job. And it's very nice to be with you today.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. What I'd like to ask, first of all, is a little bit about your journey to faith, because I think I read somewhere that you, part of your journey to faith involved sort of going to university, or you around about that sort of time in your teenage years, you sort of came to faith. Is that right?
That is correct. I came to faith through the work of the Oxford Christian Union. In my first term at Oxford, I was invited to services of the Christian Union, and I heard the gospel truly preached for the first time then, although I had been attending church, going to the local village church, and so I was brought up to go to church, but it was a different thing when I heard the Christ presented in a personal way. And so, yes, I accepted Christ at university and walked up the aisle at that service when we were invited to go forth, and have been a Christian ever since. of course.
So have you always had a love for the natural world and, you know, from childhood?
I have indeed. I was interested in plants when I was a toddler, I think, and I just wanted to study, well, animals and plants initially, but by the time I was about 10, it was all plants. And my goal was to go to university to study botany. I had two aunts who were very keen amateur botanists, and they certainly encouraged me along the way to get interested in plants. And so I was very fortunate to get into Oxford University and to be able to do the sort of study that I wanted to there. And I've been working with plants ever since, been writing a paper about plants before this interview, for example, today.
So by the sounds of things, retirement is not something that's in your vocabulary, but we'll come on to more of that later. But then let's ask about some of your experiences in the Amazon. You spend a lot of time there recording plants and discovering plants. What was that like?
Well, I did 39 expeditions to the Amazon region, and they were of an exploratory nature in that I was trying to survey the plants of the Amazon. We discovered over 350 new plants that had not been named, and so there are about 52 named after me as a result of that by other people. That's one way of being remembered, isn't it? Plants named after you. But I was involved in the Amazon in 1963 when I first went there, and have been involved in one way or another ever since. But when I first went there, the Amazon was very pristine, and I was just interested in the flora and the fauna and everything around me as a naturalist in paradise, really. And then in about 1970, they began to build roads and the destruction began. And I think I turned from being just a researcher to being a conservationist involved in how can we protect the Amazon and use it sustainably.
So how much of the Amazon then that you went out to in 1963 has been destroyed or cut down or just not what it was?
At that time, it must have been about 5% of it. It was very, very little of the Amazon, really. And it was really around some of the cities. And the small amount that the indigenous people cut down, but they cut down and then let it regenerate. So though quite a lot of what looked like original forest may have once been cut down, but their method of managing it is sustainable. And today it's over 20% that has been destroyed.
Wow,
incredible.
It is, isn't it?
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the Amazon, obviously, they call it the lungs of the planet. How much can we afford to lose? We can't afford to lose too much.
We cannot afford to lose much more. People are very worried now that if we lose more than 25%, that will be the tipping point. And it will change the climate so much that we'll get a lot less rain, and it will change from being rainforest to savanna. And this is a very real fear. And so I'm very worried at the moment that the current president of Brazil is taking away all the protection laws, and the deforestation is increasing. So we are in danger of losing the whole Amazon forest if we cut down more than about 25% of it.
Wow,
Right.
That's incredible. So is there any sign that rainfall is reducing in the Amazon at the moment?
Yes, there is. That's why we're worried about it. We can see very definitely. I was in the Amazon in 2005, which was one of the years of drought. And they said this is a once in 100-year phenomenon. Then I was there again in 2006, and there was another. And we've had 5 years of drought since that first one in 2005. And so it's very real that the forest recycles the rainfall and it's gradually blown across the Amazon. But if you lose the trees where the rain comes in from the east, then you get less through the whole forest. And so there is quite an effect now. We've got very good data about this, and I have no doubt that it is a problem.
Okay. Can I ask about climate change more generally? What is your assessment on exactly where we are in the process of climate change at this moment worldwide?
Yes, this is a crucial year for it because we have the large conference on climate change, the COP26 in Glasgow in November of this year. And climate change is actually the biggest threat that is threatening the world at the moment. It's much bigger threat than COVID or anything else because it affects the whole world, and it is getting more serious. If we don't curb the emissions of carbon dioxide, we are in trouble. We as a species, many of the biological species of the world are under threat from climate change. So we need to take this seriously. And that's why I spend much more time now lecturing on the issues of climate change than about the biology of the Amazon rainforest, because I believe we've got to do that, whether whoever we are. And so it's an important issue for Christians because it affects the future of humankind. So of all people who should be interested are those who believe that there is a creator who created this world in which we live.
Mm.
So as Christians, you believe that we have a greater need to step up to the plate, if you wish, and do something about this, to get behind this and support this thing.
I do believe that very strongly, because if we believe that there is a creator and that this world is a different attitude than an ordinary layman might have to it, then I think we have to take special care to protect the creation around us. So I think that Christians probably are the ones who should be leading and shouting out about protecting creation.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Do you think it's a generational thing? I think that as growing up as a girl, we didn't really even think about such things as recycling or reusing. I think the most I ever did was probably put a bottle in a bottle bank, and that was occasionally. And now the younger generation, people in their teens and 20s, seem to be much more environmentally focused than perhaps people of an older generation. Do you think it turning people who are slightly older is a bigger job?
You have hit the nail on the head there, really. It is a generational thing. And I am encouraged by that, really, to see how the younger generation are responding to this all over the world. I've given lectures in many different countries. I remember when I gave a lecture to high school children in New Delhi about 10 years ago. And there were something like 2,000 there, and after the lecture, they started asking questions. I couldn't believe the knowledge, the interest, the concern that there was amongst those teenagers in that audience. And that was a huge encouragement to me. And I've had similar things in the UK, in Brazil, in other places. And so the younger generation has got this, but I think that more and more the older generation is catching on. You see much more involvement now with politicians about the environment, and I'm encouraged that I think it is at least on the agenda of all three major parties in this country. And I know now that it is back on the agenda for the United States, who withdrew from it completely for 4 years. I'm very relieved about that. And I just hope that it continue, because if we're really going to solve the climate change, we need the two large leading nations of the world, China and the United States, to be involved and to work together on it. So I hope that something will come out of those talks last week in Alaska between China and the United States about climate change. They agree on at least that, as well as the many differences they have.
Yes, good.
Your time is spent partly now working with Arosha, the Christian environmental charity and campaigning organization. They're trying to get churches to do more around caring for creation and about climate change. So what are some of the practical things that we as Christians can do to care for creation?
I think that Russia is a wonderful organization, and it is really inspiring churches. And congratulations that your church is an eco church. That shows that you have taken some precautions and really encouraged your congregation to take the environment seriously. I belong to a Silver Eco Church too in Lyme Regis. And so we are both involved in that sort of thing. Now, Christians, everybody needs to do things. One of the things that people often ask me, the small amount that I do, will it make any difference? Well, small amounts mount up when you get a lot of people doing it. And so it is very important that you do the recycling, that you do all the other things that now everybody knows about. But one of the things I think that we can do especially is lobby politically, lobby our politicians, vote for the people who are going to have the best, greenest agenda as well. So it's not just our practical things, it's our political activity, because a lot of young people now, as Louise just pointed out, are interested in the environment, but we still have a lot of work to do with the older generation and a lot of the politicians in that. So that's why I think that's one of the activities we should do. But I think it's important to look at this from the Christian point of view, to look and see, why do I as a Christian care about the environment, and look at the theology, look at how much there is in the Bible about taking care of creation, the fact that it is God as creator. But then you read some of the chapters, some of the Psalms that are all about the environment and the wonderful things. The heavens declare the glory of the Lord. And we read the last chapters of Job, where God speaks out of a whirlwind. And what does he do? He doesn't just talk about anything else but the wonders of creation. And so surely that means that it is there to enjoy. And so who more should be protecting it than us as Christians?
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Sir Ian, for your time that you've given to us today, for explaining things so widely as well, making things much more easier to understand.
You're very welcome, and keep up, and I hope that Crossroads soon becomes a gold church.
That's a high bar to climb, isn't that one? Yeah,
I'm sure we'll get there.
Yeah, Sir Ian, thank you so much for your time today, and I'd love to chat again sometime. We could have gone on far more, I think.
Thank you very much.
Gone. Thank you.
Not at all.
Thank you very much, Sir Ian, for giving us your time and for interviewing with us. We thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you. It's great.
What an interesting man. He's done so much that we didn't even scratch the surface, really, of what he's done. No, incredible things.
It was really good. Yeah. But it also leads us on beautifully to our third and final topic today, which is all about twinning your bins. So perhaps you ought to just enlighten us a little bit more about this.
Well, we've already twinned our toilets at Crossroad.
Yes, we have.
So what that means is that we've raised money to build toilets in the developing world for those that don't have access to hygienic sanitary toilets. So we've done that. Now we are twinning our bins. Now Kay Pike is the driving force behind this, as always, and she's introduced us to this. She's actually twinned a bin at home, and there is something on the Crossroad Facebook page if you want to go and have a look at that and find out more. But we at church are going to twin our bins as well.
Yes. So the project is to twin a bin with another country that has real big problems with getting rid of their rubbish and waste. And the main way that they get rid of their rubbish is by burning it, which is incredibly bad for people's health. It's estimated that 1 million people die every year from inhaling toxic fumes from burnt waste.
But also there's the environmental cost as well of that smoke going up into the atmosphere, and also just the rubbish that builds up everywhere because the poor don't have their rubbish collected. The rich do. The rich pay for it and they get theirs collected, but the poor don't.
So we've both been out to Nicaragua separately on different trips and seen the rubbish piling up for ourselves, especially with the poor people. We also both travelled out to Bluefields where the rich people send all their rubbish and the poor get to pick over it and pull out bits and pieces. It's really quite tragic actually. So this is our opportunity to help and to do something about it.
So what the idea is, there's this organisation that does the bin twinning, and all the money that you give them goes towards setting up a project in a developing country where they will provide bins to the poor, and it's £45 for a wheelie bin for a domestic one, or £150 for a commercial one, and then they will collect the rubbish, they will recycle what they can and dispose of what they can't responsibly. And therefore they're saving the poor from burning it, they're not littering up the countryside, and the smoke isn't going into the atmosphere as well.
And they're also providing jobs for people to do.
Yes, and also it's providing employment for people out there too. So it's a win-win situation. What's not to love about it?
So we have 2 ordinary grey bins at the church. We don't have a commercial bin at all. And they are going to cost £45 each to twin them. So if you want to be part of twinning the church's bins, then you can give your donation straight to the church. You can pop it in the collection basket if you're coming to church. You can pop it through our door and we will make sure that our bins at the church get twinned with this company that are doing all of this.
Yes, and of course you can twin your bin at home as well if you like. Details will be below. All the details will be below.
Right, well that is it for today. Next week is our very last Jon and Louise on Life for a few weeks whilst we celebrate Easter. So I think we're going to be making a simnel cake.
We are back in the kitchen and Louise is cooking.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up
what could
because
possibly go wrong?
Cakes are not my forte, and I'm not just being fakely humble here. I really mean it.
You made a really good chocolate fudge cake the other day.
Yeah, that was just God's grace and blessing. Anyway, we will see you next time. Please don't forget to subscribe because although we're not doing Jon and Louise on Live for a few weeks, we are going to be looking at some other bits and pieces. And so you'll be the first to get any new videos that we post.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.